Hi and Assalamualaikum. Today we will present about fiscal policy, monetary policy, inflation and unemployment in Singapore.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I will present about the background of Singapore. So first, Singapore is a giant of the economy. It's been in Southeast Asia, most modern city for over a century. This country includes the islands of Singapore with some 58 smaller islands. So it's located at the tip of the Malay Peninsula. Singapore is a tropical climate welcome both leisure and business travelers year-round. Besides that, Singapore is known as a city in the gardens that consumes 50% of the islands in a green space. It's a thriving metropolis offering a world-class infrastructure, a fully integrated transport networks, dynamic business environment, vibrant sleeping spaces, and a rich culture.
Now we are going to look at the three economic activities in Singapore. Number one is the manufacturing factor, which contributes 20 to 25% of the country's annual GDP. Singapore's manufacturing includes electronics, chemicals, biomedical sciences, logistics, and transport engineering. In the third quarter of 2017, the manufacturing sector grew by 35%, with clusters like electronic and precision engineering benefiting from high demand. Number two is exporter. Cultivation is intensive with vegetables and fruits grown, and poultry raised for local consumption. The local fishing industry supplies only a portion of the total fresh fish requirement. Most of the catch comes from offshore fishing vessels. Singapore is a major exporter of both orchids and aquarium fish. Last but not least is the financial services industry. Home to over 200 banks and a regional hub of choice for many global financial services firms. The transfer of knowledge, processes, technology, and skills between global, regional, and domestic market.
Next, I will present about the economic issues in Singapore. The first economic issues in Singapore is inflation. Inflation is a rise in price, which can be translated as the decline of purchasing power over time. The rate at which purchasing power drop can be reflected in the average price increase. Inflation can be contrasted with deflation, which occur when price decline and purchasing power increase. Next is the causes of inflation. There are two causes of inflation. The first causes is demand pull inflation. It is occur when aggregate demand increase exceeds aggregate supply that causes excess demand when the economy is near or at full employment. Example for demand pull inflation is COVID-19 pandemic demand. Next is cost push inflation. It occurs when demand remains static or grows even when price climb higher. It is started from shortage or cost increase in labor, raw materials or capital goods that may causes company to cut back on production to cut costs. Next is the effect inflation in Singapore. There are two effect inflation in Singapore. The first one is lost purchasing power. As purchasing erode, many people feel the impact on their budget. It is important to monitor how well your income keeps pace with the change. Next, the effect in inflation in Singapore is production. When COVID-19 pandemic broke out, people also cut back on high contact activity to protect themselves from the virus. As a result, the demand, particularly for service, declined sharply and customer price fell. It also affects logistics, transportation, and production supply chains in many countries that lead to delay and supply shortage for products from Singapore. Next, in this picture, we can see the growth rate on the real gross domestic product (GDP) from 2018 to 2028. In 2021, after adjusting from inflation, Singapore reported a gross domestic product (GDP) rate of 8.88%. This number is projected to decrease in 2022, settling about 5.23%, to increase from the previous 2 years.
The second economic issue in Singapore is unemployment. Unemployment is referred to a situation where a person actively searches for a job but unable to find it. Unemployment also acts as a key economic indicator because it signals the ability or inability of workers to obtain work and contribute to the productive output of the economy. Singapore is one of the countries with the lowest unemployment rate compared to other OECD countries. There are a few causes of unemployment. The first cause is cyclical unemployment. It occurs when the rate of demand for goods and services increase or decrease slowly relatively to the supply of labor available in the industry. Total demand that increased slowly relatively to the supply in the economy will create the new job that insufficient to accommodate the new influx of the labor that will lead to the cyclical unemployment. The second causes of unemployment is structural unemployment. This situation occurs when the skill possessed by the workforce do not match the skill required by the developing industry. This situation can cause the industry to lose competitiveness in the market. It also will cause the workers to be dismissed because the skills that they have do not suitable or considered as an update. There are a few effects of unemployment. The first one is increased poverty rate. This situation occurs because there are a large number of people who do not have a job, which means the people do not have a stable income to support their life. This situation also can lower the standard of living of the people and it enables them to have the status of being poor. A high poverty rate also can lead to the increase in criminal cases such as robbery. The second effect of unemployment is having a negative impact on the mental state of those who are still working. People who still have a job will feel worried about the possibility that they were the next person who will lose their job or getting fired. People also will hesitate to find another job because they do not believe in the statement where there are companies that said to be lucky for them to work under. They also have a possibility where they feel sorry to their colleagues that lose their job, especially when they're at the same level, which is they have the same qualification and skill. As we can see in the graph, unemployment rate in Singapore reached its highest rate in January 2021, where it confirmed to be at the rate of 3.2% before decreasing to 2.9% in the following period. Singapore continues to record decreases in the unemployment rate until January 2023, with the rate of 1.8%. In June 2023, the unemployment rate experienced a slight increase, where the unemployment rate was at the rate of 1.9% compared to the previous period. Unemployment rate in Singapore rose again to 2% in July 2023 from 1.9% in previous period. It is the highest unemployment rate since the fourth quarter of 2022.
Now we're going to look at fiscal policy that Singapore uses. Firstly, we need to understand what fiscal policy is. Fiscal policy refers to how government uses taxes and spending to affect the economy. It is generally used by governments to combat poverty and encourage robust economic spending. Essentially, fiscal policy are the actions governments will take by either taxing the people or spending the people's money to promote economic growth and prevent economic crisis from occurring. Okay, now we look at the fiscal policies used by the Singaporean government to combat inflation. Number one is the Enterprise Financing Scheme. It covers the increased maximum amount for trade and working capital loans. Number two is energy efficiency grant. It lessens the effect of rising electricity rates by continuing to encourage companies in the food services, food manufacturing, and retail sectors. Thirdly is the assurance package. It will boost household subsidies to assist offset growing living expenses and a higher sales tax. The eligible Singaporeans will receive an additional guarantee package by cash payment. On the other hand is unemployment. Singapore employs a number of fiscal policies to handle unemployment. Firstly is the Jobs Credit Scheme. It offers employees a 12% pay cut for every local worker, and it is replaced with the Job Support Scheme during COVID-19. And number two is the JSS compensation. Salary increases given to local employees who met the requirements. Singapore launched a supplementary budget called the Resilience Budget. Thirdly is the Self-Employed Training Scheme. Training grants for approved skills future series or sector-specific training programs includes self-employed income support scheme, and those aged 35 and above automatically registered under Singaporean Revenue Service or Central Bank Funds Board.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I will present for the next part, that is monetary policy. So monetary policy is referred to the actions and statements of a central bank in charge of managing in the money supplies. So there are to promote economic growth and financial stability, while it also maintains a resilient, robust and trusted financial. It's also establishing an inclusive and innovative financial center. So monetary policy is more focused on the exchange rates rather than the money supplies or interest rates. So I will go to the first issue. This is inflation. So inflation, there is a MMO. This is a money markets operation. Money market operation is a financial instruments with high liquidity and short maturity are exchanged. So there are four elements under the MMO. The first one is direct borrowings or lending. So MAS, known as Monetary Authority of Singapore, borrows Singapore dollars on a no guarantee and interest in paying basis and establish withdrawals of Singapore dollars. Besides that, MAS also lends Singapore dollars on no guarantee and interest earnings and constitutes an injections of Singapore dollars. Okay, besides that, there are also foreign exchange swap. Foreign exchange swap is a contract where one party borrows currency and at the same time he lends another to the second party. And the third one is Singapore Government Securities, that's known as SGS. This SGS is a process where MAS will borrow Singapore dollars against SGS to withdraw liquidity from the banking system. And the last one is Monetary Authority of Singapore bills. This is responsible to help banks in better managing their liquidity and to increase the supplies of quality liquid assets. So the second one is exchange rate. So exchange rate is a Singapore dollar is managing against a basket of currency of Singapore Central Bank's that's managers, competitors and trading partner. So MAS is responsible to manage the float regard. Besides that, there are several structures or factors which allow the exchange rates to function effectively. The first one is the country have a high savings rates in the public sector due to the government's budgetary and surpluses. Besides that, also MAS has gains credibility through its preemptive and effective policy decisions. Okay, so for the second issue is unemployment. So education and training is provides a new skill for the long-term unemployment that enable them to find jobs in emergency industry. Singapore's already provide job trainings, course free subsidizations, counselings, and jobs database service. It will help to improve people's knowledge. Besides that, Singapore also boasts an extensive system of Works First trainings that supports both initials and ongoing training for all major industry. So the second one is subsidy for employment. So there is a program that's known as Active Labour Market Program. So these activities can help to encourage firms to employ specific categories of workers. It allows enterprise and workers to express their mutual desires to keep the employment relationship alive. It also allows liquidity constraint firms to engage in labor retention and preserving their skilled workforce in the downturn. It will limit the increase in inequality resulting from an economic crisis.
There are few recommendations on how we can cope with the economic issues. The first one is a recommendation on how to cope with the inflation. First, we can reduce unnecessary spend. Consumers can divide their expenses into several parts, such as fixed expenses and discretionary expenses. Discretionary expenses refer to expenses where business or household can survive without it, which means it's not a necessary expenses. Consumers can start with checking subscription and cancelling subscription that are not longer in use, such as video games and Netflix. Consumers also can switch into budget-friendly option to reduce the frequency of spending. The second one, we can shop smart. We can buy cheap brand product at the supermarket. Consumers also advised to shop during the closing time because there are a lot of shops that are offering discount toward the end of the day. Consumers also advised to buy durable items such as tissue paper in a bulk. The next one is a recommendation on how to cope with the unemployment. First, change in industrial technique. Production technique should be appropriate to the needs and demand in the country. If the country faces high unemployment problem, the industrial sector should use the labor intensive rather than capital intensive. The second recommendation is change in the education system, where the students should be given option in furthering their studies. For the students who like higher education and have appropriate qualification, they should be admitted to the college and university to further their studies. Emphasis also should be given to the vocational education, where the student can enhance their skill that are required by the industrial sector. So in conclusion, Singapore government is very smart in controlling their country's economy. It can be proven when Singapore has a low rate of inflation and unemployment in their country. Their government also has launched various programs in order to prevent the problem of inflation and unemployment from increasing. Singapore government is very efficient and effective in managing economic activities in their country. Singapore economic and monetary system can be an example by the developing country in managing their economy. That's all from us. Thank you.